the name Disorientalism is an intentional sort of collision or portmanteau or something of Orientalism, which is a concept from Edward Said, post-colonial scholar Edward Said, and this a concept that the digital studies scholar Lisa Nakamura writes about, of a kind of double disorientation that racialized users, right, of technology experience with the advent of new technologies. So we were kind of bringing these two things together with that title. The concept of Orientalism that Said develops is so important because it allows us to identify how the thought of the Orient, this problematic construction of the Orient, is deployed to secure Western hegemony. That term, I think, is very useful because it helps us to identify something that is operating in global culture. One of the promises of technology is global culture. I think that this is where Lisa Nakamura's work is so insightful. So she had a book, it's called Cybertypes. She is talking about, in the introduction, this kind of double disorientation that people of color experience. So the idea that, like, a lot of the sort of jargon around the internet, the early internet, and this is also, you know, sort of the same jargon that was around when I started off talking about the idea that VR was going to be this kind of entertainment system that people would have at home, and they would have this big furniture thing to experience it. What was so cool about VR and what was so cool about the early internet was this idea that you could occupy, in essence, a different or otherized or subaltern or marginalized perspective that is not your own. The same kind of discourse happened slightly more recently with something like Second Life, where people were like, oh, you can go build your own avatars, you can be like a flamingo carrot if you want, you know, like whatever, you know, you could have any body you want, right? So this idea that you could be in any perspective, and that there's this great liberation in occupying a position that is not centralized, in letting go of your central, like, control as a user. I mean, for one thing, we can question to what extent, you know, communication technology like the internet really decenters the control of the user, right? I would argue not so much, but her point in this is that if you are already in a marginalized position, that disorientation of a centered position is just doubly disorienting. It's not liberatory if you're already disoriented, if you're already on the margin. We were interested in how, in that idea, basically, in how, like, this global culture of technology, and this kind of promise of the global culture of technology is doubly disorienting, and how, as artists, we can try to embody that double disorientation in all of its problematic ways. Like, you know, it is, because it's never, you know, we are always failing at that task, right. And we are always, we are always further disorienting our effort.